All right, Christian. So you took a different approach to this, and where most people were finding subjects and putting them together in order to create a scene for a portrait, you happened upon a scene and want to make a group portrait. So a very different approach here than most of the other students had. You're an ISO 400, 31 millimeters, f4 at 1/1600th of a second. So a lot of, or a really fast shutter speed there and not a lot of depth of field. I'd probably adjust that slightly just to give yourself slightly more depth of field here. Between the foreground, you want the Biden-Harris to be in focus, and you want her to be totally in focus and him to be totally in focus. So making that slight adjustment, I think, would work better for this scene. Your subject here looks to be completely in focus. And then I think as we move back, if we were to look at a larger file of this, we would notice that they're falling off just a little bit on focus. The lighting on your subjects is actually working really nice. It looks like the light is coming from, like it's midday light. It's coming from above and maybe a little bit to the side of the subjects, but all of them are pretty well illuminated, and there's not these harsh shadows coming across their face like you would expect here. So overall, I think the lighting works really well in this situation. The layering, we're seeing that layering, but as we move back, we're not able to see the focus, and people's identity is getting overlapped with, right? So here you have the bow of the violin coming across that person's face. We can't see the subject's face. Here you're the elbows coming into this person's face. We know there's someone back here, but we can't see them. So that idea of having everyone visible is not happening here. And I do think that's key for what we're looking for in a group portrait. We need to see each individual, especially here when we're seeing the subjects all dressed the same. Then we especially want them each to show their individuality through this image. And that comes with the instrument that they're playing and maybe their expression. And if they're getting their face covered up, then we're not able to see that. So that would be one big push I would have for you. Also, if you set yourself up directly in front of the subjects, you might be able to have a little bit more of an opportunity to get them staggered. It seems like they've set themselves up in this like really staggered position so that everyone is able to be seen. So lining up right in front of them, which might be difficult because this is an event that's happening, I think could be helpful. And then the last thing about this image is I find it like really fascinating that this is politically motivated, right? We see all the Biden-Harris everywhere, but this is a radio station. This isn't like a Biden-Harris bus that's coming through. And I think that that's important to tell us who these people are. So showing us that edge opposed to this front side of the truck, I think would tell that narrative in a little bit of a stronger way. All right, this image is from Allison. And Allison, all of your images have been pixelated, and then we fixed it last week. And this image is pixelated again. So I'm going to ask you to do the same thing that I asked you to do last week, which is turn it in without sizing it. For some reason, when you're sizing it, things are getting really pixelated. And it's even more obvious here than it's been in the past. If we look at the shirt, you can see the individual pixels, right? If you look at her face, I'm just seeing squares. I'm not seeing her face. And if you look at it even larger, it's even more obvious. It's just like we're seeing pixels. So I want you to turn this in again, and I'll change your grade. Right now you're going to lose 20% for the pixelation. And also when it's pixelated like this, I can't tell you for sure if it's in focus or not. I can't compare the focus too well between the subjects and the background to tell where the focus really is. All right, so for the lighting here, or let's look at your settings. You're at ISO 800, 48 millimeters, f11 at 1/500th of a second. So those settings all look fine. The f11 gives you a little bit of leeway as far as getting everyone in focus, right? If you shot this at f2.8, 8, it would be harder to get everyone in focus. The lighting that you're using is open shade. So you have these bright areas in the background and you've moved your subject to open shade. And that was a really smart decision. So the lighting on them is more appealing. It's not, we see a little bit of these bright areas, but those aren't creating hard shadows across their faces. So the lighting that you're working with is better than that background. But I think if you moved them so that it's creating more of a direction towards them, so instead of having their back to the light, but having the light come in on the side, it would add more depth to their character, right? Would be able to see more depth on their faces. So setting up on a tree that's like perpendicular to where they are, that would work better here. The proximity between each other, I think this is very sweet. They're so close. They're all touching each other. I think it's a family. I don't remember if it was your sister or what the situation was here. But they're very close, and you're communicating their relationship here, and that's really beautiful. Pulling them away from that tree would add more depth to the scene. So the tree right behind them flattens out that part of the scene. So pulling them 5 or 10 feet in front of that would be more pleasing. It would actually be more pleasing to eliminate the tree, to have them like posed over here. So you're having more depth, like here's a bush, here's a tree, here's a fence, here's a bench. Depth within the background and sort of flattening it out with them right in front of that tree there. And then this image will be the last one, and then I'll stop this critique. This is by Linda. You're at ISO 100, so nice and low. You're at 56 millimeters, so normal lens. F 5.6 at 1/15th of a second. 1/15th of a second is a tricky shutter speed with all of these people holding still. And it looks like you have 5 subjects that held still. All of these guys in the back, the couple, but this little one seemed to move their face a little bit. So that 1/15th of a second almost worked for you, but then we have that movement here. The focus all the way through looks good from his knee to his face. That's all in focus. So by moving back, you're able to extend that plane of focus a little bit. The lighting is the number one issue with this image. If we put this in the develop module, we can see that you have areas on his face that are getting blown out. I would expect that there's spots in there, but there's very little detail there. Parts of their hair is getting blown out. So you've moved them so they're not in that direct light. You've moved them a little bit out of it, but moving them even further into that open shade is going to work better. So instead of this area here where you have that bright light, this area here, which is more shaded, is going to work better. So that open shade is going to work really well for group portraits. Even if you look and you look at wedding portraits, you'll see it over and over again that people are using that open shade as their tool to get good lighting on a group portrait. So that's what I would encourage you to do here. And that would eliminate these bright areas that are pulling my attention in different directions, right? Pulling my attention to her face and then his neck, and then up here on his face, then down here in the background. So it's pulling me in directions that aren't where you want to pull me. Are you communicating what you want with this image? I think so. You have this sweet relationship between all of them. It's very posed, but then I'm assuming these partners here, their interaction with one another soften that pose and make us feel like it's a really genuine moment.